we have to make politics and advocacy and social justice work accessible. So many young people stick to what they know because they feel like there is no accessible entry point to social justice outside of showing up to a march or a rally. And yes, we can chat GPT things and look up how to change a law and how to start a movement, but AI isn't personal. It doesn't take you by the hand and show you the ropes. You know, it doesn't show you how to create community in a meaningful, a lasting and impactful way. It might tell you the issues, but it won't show you the experiences. It won't show you the joy, the pain, the trauma behind why we fight the way we do. And that only comes from community. That only comes from mentorship. It comes from the principles of each one and teach one. I'm grateful to have literally grown up in this movement under the leadership of people like Reverend Sharpton, Hazel Dukes, Tamika Mallory, you, Angela. That was a privilege in and of itself, but not all young people have that. And so some of the young people that are entering this field are literally entering with nothing but emotions from lived experiences, emotion and conversation. And it's on us to make sure that we're creating spaces for them to harness that emotion into change. There are young people who want to get involved, but feel like they have no reach, no power, no entryway. And it's our job as activists. It's also the job of older generations to call us in instead of calling us out. I agree that there's a disconnect between the seasoned generation and my generation, but I don't necessarily think it's accurate to say that it's all on us. The art of mentorship and guidance is completely lost. Like, how do you call yourself a mentor and say that you're passing the baton, but the first time your mentee makes some mistakes, you dip out on them? Or because you disagree on our versions of liberation, we're not worthy of teaching anymore. The baton can only be passed if one person lets go of the end. So we're constantly being told that we have to abide by the hierarchy, that we have to wait our turn, that we have to, when we try, we're literally dismissed or gaslighted. So which one is it? Do you want us to stand up or do you want us to stand behind you? You can't just teach our history to those who already know it. Sometimes you have to pick the young person who you might not usually pick out of the crowd. You have to pick the young person that needs it the most, that might not show up to the events, that might not show up to the rally, the protest. You pick the young person who needs the help the most. And while we're also at it, we kind of have to acknowledge that we play right into the hands of respectability politics. Like, why do I have to have, look at my nails, y'all. Why do I have to have short nails and no lashes? Because to fight for my people, like, whose respect am I trying to earn? I can't tell you how many times I've heard, even from my own mom, shout out mom, I love you, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard, oh, your lashes are too long, or your shorts are too short, or you have tattoos and they're going to look at you differently. Like, my own people are looking at me different. Please tell me how that's any different than palm-colored folks looking from what they do to us. And that in and of itself is white supremacy. But a lot of the older generation is not trying to have that conversation because they grew up in the era where Sunday best is every single day, which I absolutely respect. But why can't you respect my choice to not play into the hands of white supremacy? And why can't you acknowledge that I can still fight the same fight with my long hair, my long lashes, and my sharp nails?
I love this. You guys are always welcome here to have this conversation. Ty, you were going to say something. We want to hear from you.
And I'm glad that Victoria went first because she said so much that I don't got to be repetitive in that way. I think that, just one thing that I want to say is that mentorship piece is key. We stand on the shoulders of giants, but what good is it if those giants don't converse with us and impart wisdom while they're here and still standing tall? All too often there has been too much friction. And like I said, it's not that we're unwilling to learn. I think that a lot of the times the older generation is unwilling to value us, like I said, as co-collaborators. They think that somehow that age throws them into a hierarchy. I have done so much in my life. Victoria, Marley as well. These experiences are valued. They're different, but they're valued. There was a point that Tiffany made about the fact that in our generation, she's not seeing a whole bunch of folks. I would be lying to you to say everybody is out here trying to be the next MLK or, the next whoever. That's not everybody. But it was never everybody. And I think that's the point that I was trying to make earlier, is that it only takes a dedicated few to get that movement started, to organize the information, to figure out how to reach people where they are, to get it started. We never had 1,000,001 thought leaders. Just the few that we had out there were intentional about how they were spreading their practice. And so I think that's how we get it done. It doesn't take every single person being able to do what Victoria does or what Marley does or what I do. But it takes us being able to reach those people in a language that lets them know, hey, maybe your front lines isn't protesting. But if you're a teacher, go dismantle white supremacy in the classroom. Maybe your front lines is not going to be direct action. But if you're in a hospital and you can make sure that a positive health outcome happens for a Black woman because you listen, let that be your fight against white supremacy. Because you see, there are different ways to fight this fight. And it's going to take all of the approaches. No one way will save us. It's not going to be a bunch of talking heads, on these podcasts. It's not going to be the folks that get arrested. It's not going to be the folks that are pushing policy. It is going to be all of us in concert. And even then, we're still going to be working to get to where we want to get. So I think that it's important to understand that, like, we are working on a thing that will consistently be worked on. The best way that we can work on it, though, is having conversation. And the last thing that I want to say about that, and bridging gaps, sort of revisiting that first point, is these legacy organizations got to open up. They got to open up, and they got to really reimagine what it can look like to be a community leader. Maybe it isn't suited and booted in Sunday's best. Times have changed. I mean, look, I love the NAACP, right? But that's National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Are we around here calling folks colored anymore? So right there, even in the naming, it lets you know there's something that's a bit antiquated in how you're programming. And that's not to say NAACP doesn't do great things. I just collaborated with the Legal Defense Fund on a project a while back. So I know that they're doing awesome work. I know NAN is doing awesome work. What I'm saying is the things that got us here will not be the things that get us there. And it is important to take away the beautiful things that were successful and worked, but understand that we're going to have to put in motion some new things for a new generation.
I want to just go to, sorry, Ty, I want to go to Marley real quick. You had a heart out at 30 and we're at 31. So I want to give you a chance to offer any parting words if you stop to go.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that the key to a better future will be intergenerational exchange. And I think in my time as an activist, I felt the most heard and supported by, it takes Gen X women, it takes millennial women, it takes people of all backgrounds. And I think, once again, we need to make sure that we're having this bottom-up approach within our own Black community. That for folks who are like queer, like myself, I think especially like organizations, older organizations that were founded on these principles that are kind of highly tied to eras which were more homophobic can make us feel like we don't have a space there. That are attached to certain religious beliefs makes us feel like we don't have a space there. And really making sure that we're doing the work we can to, if we notice apathy, see that as an opportunity rather to see it as something to fear. That when there are young people that are in your life that aren't demonstrating the things that you want them to do, that you don't feel are on the right path, there is an art of mentorship. There is an ability to give resources. There is capital to be spent between people using the bank of justice and not just towards systems or towards a goal, that we can share our resources amongst each other, and that it requires losing so much of the judgment we have against people who are different than us, people who approach activism different than us, and people who will not sound, speak, act, or think like Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. And you will not see those leaders again. And we need to recognize that there will be a new era that will require turning this apathy, noticing this apathy and transforming it rather than using it in such an accusatory, in a way to accuse a generation of doing something that I fully believe they do. That hope has always been the way. And I think it's really important to just reframe and say, like, why do we not believe in young Black youth? Is it not to be young, gifted, and Black? Like, even if you see and notice these things, do you not believe there is a goodness inside them that can be unlocked? And are you not willing to do the work to unlock that for your future, for their children's future, for your children's future? You want to come and accuse them and make them feel small? That will always be the biggest challenge to me. And I think is the most important part of the daily ways that we treat each other with care as a community, and that we show respect to all the ideas and all the experience, even if it comes in the package of someone that does not look like us.
Well, y'all are all brilliant, and I can't wait to part two of the conversation. I didn't want to, I just wanted to quickly weigh in here and say, because I wasn't part of last week's episode, so I haven't really opined it all here. I just want to say I respect every word that you all uttered. It was delivered with such great, deep, and heartfelt meaning. And on the latter points here, I would simply remind us, and I'm almost embarrassed to be at the other end of the conversation. We're, Angela, Tiffany, and I are the old people at the table when it feels like just yesterday we were each striking out in our own rebellious ways to start new organizations and entities and reimagine what freedom looked like for Black folk. And that brings me to the point of this road of respect and mutuality flows many different directions. And so just as it is wholly inappropriate for entrenched members of our community to make organizing space uncomfortable for you in any way, shape, or form, it is likewise also a real stick in the chest for many of our leaders in the community and our seniors who are told that their tactics are antiquated and don't work. and are in some ways held responsible for the retreading of fights that we're continuing to have today. And I don't think that it represents everybody. And by the way, not a movement we can think of included the majority of people, let alone everybody, and making them move. To know it today, everybody we know marched in the civil rights movement. Not true. But the reflective history causes us to think differently. I just say we could go so much further when we suspend with ego, judgment, and enhance the ability to be curious about what you don't know or what might be different. Curiosity leading rather than judgment. Man, I mean, we'd be unstoppable. And I'm just glad to know that y'all are in this pipeline here. And thank you.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.